Hello, everyone. So, another warm welcome to everyone who joined in the past couple minutes. We will start now with the webinar. So, our topic today is conservatory and building controls. The focus will be clearly on the product selection and how the installation will work. Before we dive into the technical topics, probably a couple words about myself. So my name is Bastian Elsner. I'm responsible for sales and marketing here at Elsner Elektronik. It's my pleasure to walk you through today's webinar. Our time together is live today, so this is not a pre-recorded webinar. This means you can ask whatever questions you will like, and I kindly ask you to really use the chat functionality. This is the biggest benefit we have, that we have a live webinar, so please make use of the question functionality so we all can make it as interactive as possible. I would very much like that. So without further ado, let's get into the topics. Our learning goals for this webinar will be to select the right control for your specific building automation project, to expand the control system via radio frequency, and how to correctly install the weather stations and the control centers. For the agenda, let's firstly, we're going to have a look at the overview of the different models that Elsner Elektronik is offering. Next up, we're going to have a look at the control of ventilation units. Afterwards, we're going to have a look at all the accessories that you will need to extend your existing or new installation. Next up, we're going to focus on the installation and also special cases, for example, the group control. In the end, we're going to have a look at the practical aspects of what we will learn today. So we're going to have several use cases that we will discuss together, and in this section, in the last section, you can also verify if you understood what we discussed today, just with some practical examples. All right, let's jump into it. First up, we will start with the overview of the control systems. Firstly, we have the Solexa with 230 volts. With the Selexa, you can do one shading control. The weather station detects temperature, precipitation, wind speed, and brightness. The radio control unit with integrated temperature sensor is a part of this package. So basically all the data that the weather station is capturing, you can see on the radio control device. Also, you can control one channel as mentioned before. Next up, we have the Arexa 230 volt, which is designed to control one window. The weather station detects temperature, precipitation, wind speed, and the brightness as well. Here we have the same radio control unit with an integrated temperature sensor for indoor temperature and outdoor temperature. Next up, we have the Solexa 2. Here you can control a window or the shading control on a wired mode. Also, you can include a maximum of 16 radio actuators and up to 32 Elsner radio frequency operating devices or sensors. It is also possible to use our Solexa 2 with an application for Android or iOS, and this works via an interface, via the Wi-Fi interface that we're offering in a package deal. Let's have a closer look at the Selexa 2. So on the first photo, we can see the Selexa 2 control system. On the right side, we see the different control options graphically represented. We can control drives such as windows, blinds, awnings, or shutters. The system can be expanded via the illustrated radio adapter plugs. We have in the program a radio adapter plugs for lighting, heating, switching, and way more. More about the extension possibilities in Chapter 2. On the left side, we see the Selexa Wi-Fi interface. With this interface, we can also control the Selexa 2, as mentioned before, via Wi-Fi or / via the smartphone or another user interface. On the bottom left, you can see the Remo Pro. Remo is basically for remote control. With this remote control, you can control all drives, or Lightning can be operated manually. On the right side, we have the Arexa, which can control a motor. After slides like this, where we have some graphics and where it's quite a huge load of information, I will wait a couple seconds and give you the chance to reflect and ask questions. If there's no questions, I will simply return. All right, since there's no questions or remarks, we will move on to the next topic. The Selexa 2 app, as mentioned before, you will require the Selexa Wi-Fi interface in order to use the Selexa 2 application. Here in the overview, you see the different parameters that you can actually control and monitor via the application. So for example, as you can see, you have the different measurements that the weather station is measuring are displayed in the application, being outside temperature, the wind speed, or also the brightness measurement. Next up, we have also the indoor sensor in the control unit itself that you can see in the fourth picture to the right. So you have the indoor temperature and also the outside temperature, which allows for automations. We will have a look at later on. So here another overview how the Selexa 2 app will communicate with the Selexa itself. Here I'll wait another couple seconds in case there are some more questions. All right, let's move on to the building control centers that we're offering. First up, we have the WS1000 Connect. We have an internet access within this device, so it is possible to access a browser with our W1000 Connect. Also, we have a mobile app functionality that can be accessed via a secure VPN connection. It is possible to set up scenes and group move commands. For example, group move commands for shading, for facade shading. As well, there's a slot for an SD card. The WS1000 Connect is available with different amounts of drive outputs. There's a 4-gang, 6-gang, 8-gang, and 10 drive output option of this device. Also, there's indoor sensors available and outdoor sensors also for external installation. This can be monitoring of air quality and also, as mentioned in the other control centers before, the data captured by the weather station itself. Next up, we have the W1000 Color/Style. This one does not have an internet functionality. It has the same variants of drive outputs, so the 4, 6, 8, and 10 drive outputs. It has 4 multifunctional outputs and 4 multifunctional inputs. As well, the indoor sensors for external installation are available in this package as well. More about the installation scheme and where to find the multifunctional outputs and inputs, we will take a closer look at the installation later on in our webinar. Next one, we have the WS1 Color/Style. This one neither has the internet functionality and it's available with 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 drive outputs. So you might wonder now, why would we offer a device with 0 drive outputs? We do that because this device is actually possible to integrate in an entire wireless system. So you do not need any physical drive output since you can control the outputs with our radio frequency accessories that we will have a closer look later on. For the different building control devices, we also have an overview that can be found on our website. This is just a screenshot from the website we can go through as well. So we categorize those devices as central units. We have different wired outputs and different wired inputs. I won't go through all that in detail since this information can be found on our website. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me and we can go through it in detail if you guys wish to do so. For the WS1000, we have the Connect app. Here you can see some screenshots from the, I think it's the Android app. No, it's the iOS app that is visible here. So this is basically a representation of what can be seen on the device itself, on the physical device installed in the house. You have, similar to the Solexa 2 app, you have different measurements that are measured by the weather station and displayed in the application, meaning you can also detect alarms when you're not in the building itself. Next up, we will discuss the control of ventilation units. If an external ventilation unit is to be switched on or off via temperature, humidity, or via a time program, this can be done via the multifunction output with maximum of 2 ampere of the controls or via a radio frequency relay. This is possible for all control centers except the Solexa and the Selexa 2. If an external ventilation unit, including a supply air with supply air flaps, is to be controlled via temperature or humidity or via a time program, the RF VM is required. The fan can be controlled from 80 volts to 230 volts in 8 steps. Once again, this is possible for the big control centers, but not for the Solexa and the Arexa. Next up, we have the radio frequency accessories. We will start with the Remo Pro. So Remo once again stands for remote control, and here we have the combination possibility of controlling up to 8 channels. This is what the Remo Pro looks like. Sorry, that is the Remo 8. So it's a basic handheld device with up, down, stop, on, off, and dimming. For example, I use this device at home for controlling the lighting system in my winter garden. So I have several lightning strips over there that I'm controlling and dimming with this device. Next up, a more complete solution when it comes to radio frequency is our Remo Pro. So this Remo Pro is also a handheld device where you can configure and control up to 32 channels. Also, those channels can be named accordingly. Next up to the release and the accessories that will be needed in order to extend an existing or also extend in the planning for your building automation project. First up, we have the switching relay for one consumer. Next up, we have a relay for 2-stage heater. Also, we have an actuator for one normal drive. We have an actuator for one drive with an output of 230 volts, an actuator for 2 drives, and dimming actuator for LED stripes, which I have in my home to control accordingly with the remote control. Next up, a dimmer for LEDs or also group dimming, and we also do have a dimmer for one LED or a LED group. Here we have a little scheme how to see how those different devices we just went through work together. So here you have the different motor control units, either for a blind motor or also for the lightning. Here in this example, we only have the connection for the lightnings, for the motor awning or for the motor blinds. This overview once again can be found on our website as well. I will not go through all the details because this can be simply looked up according to your specifications and to your requirements for your individual project. Next up, we have another list of sort of special solutions that you might need for the extension of your project. We will discuss this in more detail during the practical examples, but for now I will not go through them in more detail. If you have some specific questions about those devices, feel free to send us an email. Next up, one of my favorite topics. It's the installation of the weather station. First off, we will start with the mounting of the P04i GPS, which is contained in the package that you will get with the WS1000. So the weather station can be attached directly to a pole on the roof with a clamp. Likewise, the weather station can be mounted directly on the facade. This is how you can see the facade installation would look like. Therefore, mounting on a facade makes sense only if the shading sits on the same facade. So if the shading sits on another facade, it won't make sense to go for the facade installation. Furthermore, the weather station can be mounted and set off from the facade with the help of a mounting arm. This is the mounting arm that we have in our product range. The front of the weather station with the wind sensor must be oriented towards the south. This is very important that we follow the scheme for the installation. Also, there must be a free space of at least 60 centimeters. It has to be maintained below the weather station. Otherwise, the measurement won't be as exact as it has to be. The cable of the weather station should be routed in a bend so that the water can drip off it. You see this on the scheme on the left side, all the way to the left-hand side. Next up to the next weather station type. This is the mounting of the Solexa or the Arexa. This one has to be in alignment in the direction of driving of the shading. Here as well, we require at least 60 centimeters of a radius around the weather station. So I just received a question in the chat. I will repeat it for everyone and do my best to answer it. Thank you for the question in the first place. So back to the two-stage heater. Do you mean two channels, or it works depending on heating load? If the heating load increases, then the second stage turn on. Yes, it's correct, like you said in the last part of your question. So basically, you can turn on one heater, for example, then you have the 50%, and you want to add another heater as a group heating, then you have the 100% with the two radiators. This is just one practical example, and that is meant when we're talking about two-stage heating. It would be great if you could let me know in the chat if this question was answered to your satisfaction. If not, we can definitely go over this topic in more detail. For now, I will continue with the presentation. Once again, the driving direction or the shading direction is very important when installing the weather station of the Solexa or the Arexa with 230 volts. This is the wall or pole mounting. Again, the 60 centimeters of free space. Okay, now that we defined how to install the weather station correctly, we will jump into our first practical exercise. So here I have a little choice for you. There's 3 pictures of installed weather station. It's 1, 2, 3. I will give you guys another 20 seconds and then we will start a little survey where you can simply log in your answer. So please have another look at the pictures. They will disappear in a second and we will start the survey. Another couple seconds more. All right, let's jump into the survey. All right, thank you for participating in our survey. We will close the survey now. The results are 80% of you guys mentioned that the installation on picture 1 is the correct installation. 20% mentioned that the installation in picture 2 is the right one, and 0% said that installation example 3 is the correct way of installing a weather station. Let's jump into the solution. So the solution is actually picture 3. Let's have a look why this is correct. So here we have the 60 centimeter of space downwards, which we did not had in the other pictures. Also, we have the space around the weather station, and the weather station can be reached by the external factors such as rain, wind, sun, unhindered. This is not the case with the other installation. I will just jump back to the to this one so you see what the issue is with this installation. Here, there's not enough space for on picture 2, there's not enough space for the wind sensor to the wall of the house. In picture 1, there's not enough space below the weather station to allow for a correct wind measurement. All that is not given in picture 1 and 2, you have in picture 3. That much about the correct installation of the weather stations. Let's continue with our presentation. Next chapter is the correct installation and connection of the control center. So connecting this Selexa is very simple. You have the radio connection to the control panel, and we have many resources on YouTube for that. So you have the connection 2 is actually for the drive. Connector 4 is for the 230 volts power supply, and the connector 8 you have here down at the weather station is the programming button. Therefore, we have, as already mentioned, a lot of resources on YouTube. If you would like to see those resources or are struggling to find them, feel free to send us an email. We are more than happy to send you the links to the installation resources that we have. Next up, the Solexa 2. Here it's a very similar connection. In fact, it's identical to how you would do it with the Arexa. Next up, we will discuss the connection of the WS1000 Connect. So this is basically the connector plate that will be installed in the wall itself, and the control center will be installed on top of this one. Here you see several connectors, and this scheme can be also found in the installation manual. I won't be going through all these connectors because I believe this is rather self-explanatory. If you beg to differ, we can definitely check those. So just let me know in the chat functionality if you would like to go through it in detail or not. Next up, we have the connection PCB of the WS1000 color/style. Here we have a similar scheme. Once again, I do not wish to go over this in detail. If you would like to do so, please let me know. Next up, the connection plate of the WS1 color style. Here we have the connector 1 for the power supply and so on. Similar scheme as for the other models. Next up, we'll have a look at some sort of special case. So with the group control relay, GS2DST, two drives can be operated in parallel mode. So this is very useful for shading control or window control. This is possible to have one control output, but configure it as a group. This allows for cascading possibilities. So for example, a series of connection of several devices. This is only necessary if drives are not suitable for parallel drive, but this is in reality, in the practical world, this is often the case. Here, there's also warning and attention needs to be paid. The output power of the motor output must be taken into account. So you need to check the motor output before deciding if you can use this product in your building automation project or not. Those are all devices that we have in our offering that will allow for the special case of group control and parallel operation. This overview can be also found on our website, hence I will not discuss it in too much detail. Also, if you would like to receive this overview at the end of the webinar, please let us know. Let's jump into the examples. So in the previous section, we looked at the installation and the connection options of the controls. Now we come to some practical exercises. I have created a few examples of exercises for the selection of different control systems that I would like to go through with you in the following. This is very practically orientated and also very useful to have this in mind when going into a pitch for your customer. So the first example is as follows. The customer wishes to control one awning and 3 blinds. You can now think of yourself, what kind of solutions could you offer to fulfill the wishes of your customers? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about this for yourself, and then we will talk about the solution. All right, for this use case, we could use a WS1/4 color or style. Another option would be to use a Selexa 2 and 3 radio frequency motor control units. Next up is the second example where your customer wishes to control simply one awning, nothing else. Here we can go for an actually very small solution, but as always, there's different ways on approaching this customer case. First solution would be to simply use a Solexa with 230 volts output. Next one would be to go for a Solexa 2 set. So in case you would like to integrate something else later on, or your customer wishes to integrate, the Solexa 2 can be used for that. Our third example is the used drives required by your customer is to control 2 windows, but he does not wish to control them individually, but he wishes to control them as a group. The motor is not suitable for parallel drive. For this specific case, we can make use of the Arexa 230 volts and need the accessory for it, as mentioned before, for the special case of group control. The second option is the Solexa 2 set, and also the same accessory is needed for the group control. Next example, we're going to have a look at a more extensive window garden that can also be controlled with our device. Here, the customer wishes to control 2 awnings, 4 blinds, and 4 windows. Therefore, we will need a WS1000 with 10 drive outputs. Alternatively, the customer could go for a WS1000 style or connect. Lastly, the new project, the customer wishes to control 2 awnings, 3 blinds, and 1 window. Here we would also go for the WS1000, but only with 6 channels, or alternatively, we could go for WS1 color/style 4 with 2 radio frequency motor control units. This is the last practical exercise that we're going to do. First up, the customer needs an awning and 3 blinds. In addition, he would like to control a dimmable LED lighting. After this is done, the customer would like to additionally control manually and operate a window in his office. The last thing he wants to do is to turn an indoor fountain on and off. Let's go through the solutions itself. So for the first use case, we would require a WS1000 with 4 outputs and 1 radio frequency dimming device. I just saw there is a question in the chat. Give me a second to read it and I'll get back to you. Thank you for the question. So the questions have been if I could go in more detail when I'm talking about control, what I'm actually meaning. So there are different types of control that needs to be taken into account. First up, you have the control on the device itself. This can be to control the different commands via the touch panel itself or via the application. If I talk about control units, I'm talking about the actuators. So you need a control unit in order to allow the control from the user interface itself. I hope this makes sense. If not, please let me know so I can try to give you an even more detailed answer. Let's hop back into the solution. So after we fulfilled the first solution for the customer, he would like to control and additionally manually operate a window in his office. Therefore, we need another radio frequency motor control unit and 1 remote control, so he can actually control it in his office and not where the control center is installed, which is most likely installed in the winter garden itself. For the third part, he wants to do is turn on an indoor fountain with on-off. Therefore, he simply needs a radio frequency relay or a multifunctional output that is still free in the control device. This was already the last use case I wanted to discuss with you guys today. So we are already at the end of today's webinar. I thank you very much for your attention and for joining us today on our webinar on conservatory control. The presentation itself will be sent to you in PDF format after the webinar. Also, we recorded the entire webinar so you can look it up once more on YouTube or also on our website. You will find all that via Elsner Academy section on our website. But you will also receive a link via email that you can find the recording very easily. Also, we will send you a quick feedback form how you liked the webinar, if you were satisfied with the content, if you missed something, or if everything was perfect. Of course, I would love to hear that everything is perfect, but I'm way more interested in what you guys did not like, because we try to make the webinars as good as we can for you guys, so we're really dependent on the feedback. You can also let me know what kind of webinars you would like to see in the future, and we are more than happy to prepare something for you and send you the invitation afterwards. I will stay in the webinar for another 10 minutes in case you have questions. So 11:15, I will leave the webinar. You can find my email address on the screen right now. So if you have questions afterwards, feel free to contact me via email.